Yes, we're switching gears right now to talking about security around the country. I mean, there have been quite a number of security developments, some of them positive, others perhaps not so. We're still reeling from incidences that have happened in north-central Nigeria. Clearly, well, thankfully, some arrests have been made with the incidences that happened in Benue. Today, we're being told that some major terrorists have now been taken out by the Nigerian military. There'll be questions as to, how much more do we need to, overcome before we are able to finally say that we are in a safe space. Joining us this morning, we have with us the Chief of Defense Operations, who is Major General Emeka Onumajuru. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily.
Thank you so very much. My pleasure to be here.
Indeed, thank you so much for joining us. Well, this is the news that we have now been greeted with, that a major bandit who had been terrorizing parts of the northwest of the country has now been taken out. His name is Kachala Yellow Dambokolo. I don't know whether it was on with the operations of the defense operations, or was it just the army? Was it just the Air Force? Can you give us a little brief as to how this happened?
Yeah, most operations are most state coordinated among the three services. The Armed Forces of Nigeria is fully joined in terms of conduct of operations. You have the Land Forces, which is the Army, you have the Air Force, you also have Special Forces elements under Defense Headquarters. So most operations are joined, and even elements of the National Intelligence Agencies like the DSSS and also police are involved in the conduct of operations. So I wouldn't ascribe it to a single service activity.
Yeah, but can you tell us about this particular operation which took this man out?
Yeah, for some time now there have been challenges in Benue and Plateau, which the armed forces have clearly been addressing. And of course, a key part of our strategy is to focus on the leadership, because we believe that once the leadership is taken out, then the chances of the foot soldiers regrouping is always limited. So a key line of operation is decapitation of the leadership of not just bandits, even terrorists. And the bandits that you mentioned is one of those key elements we have been looking for. Unfortunately, the troops were able to zero in on him and neutralize him. And we believe more will still be achieved in that light.
Okay. So while we're making progress on the one hand, taking out bandits, I mean, a few days ago, I'm trying to see if it was if it's up to a week now or 2 weeks, there was a reported meeting between members of the Nigerian security forces. I'm unclear now as to which group, but then you also had terrorists, or will I say bandits, in a meeting, in a truce meeting of some sort. Is this something that you're aware of?
Yes, you see, it's not really a truce meeting. There are ongoing DDR programs in the Northwest, ongoing DDR programs under Operation Safe Corridor Northwest. And the idea of the DDR program is for bandits who are willing, no attachments, who are willing to surrender wholeheartedly and seek the path to peace so that they can be reintegrated in the society. So there are no elements of negotiation whatsoever. The program is open, like we have in the Northeast, for bandits and their members who chose to give up willingly, and then they are profiled. After they are profiled, they go through a judicial process. Those that have been found really culpable, of course, face the extant laws. But those that fit into the bill for DDR are sent to Operation Safe Corridor Northwest, almost a one-year program for de-radicalization and rehabilitation.
Okay, so that meeting, took place for a number of Nigerians who saw some of the visuals on social media. I do not know if you were privy to some of the visuals that they saw. They saw these people coming in with their arms, with their guns, and they were wondering, and some of them were, parked very close to security vehicles. These were clips that we saw. We were told of what happened, within the hall, but the optics gave a lot of Nigerians concern as to how it is that we could be seeing these people armed, going for a meeting with Nigerian security operatives, knowing that the only people who should be the sole bearer of arms are people like yourself who have, vowed to uphold the element of force lawfully within the Nigerian state. How do we explain that?
Thank you. I'm happy you talked about clips. You talked about clips. You know, clips can be very deceptive. Clips can be manipulated. If you have talked about a complete range of video from beginning to end, then you can clearly understand what I'm saying. But the clips can be manipulated. Now, like I told you earlier, there are DDR programs going on. Those DDR programs are voluntary, no attachments to anything. Bandits, terrorists who are ready to surrender and give up fighting have that opportunity. Now, it's not as if that you can really throw up your arms and the system takes you in. No, there are still a lot of measures. The Ministry of Justice is even involved in the screening, in determining the extent of your culpability. Those that are really culpable are separated. But those that are not that culpable are not taken to the DDR Center in Operation Safe Corridor Northwest. So that is the true situation.
Yeah, while that's, while I'm not dismissing that, clips cannot be manipulated, what I'm saying is that people did see these people with, guns. It's like when the meeting was over, they were going back to their base. Maybe they were not satisfied, or maybe they're not ready to voluntarily surrender their arms.
That is why I'm telling you what the situation is. You see, there are collection centers in each of the states of the Northwest. There are collection centers where bandits first surrender themselves, the arms are collected, and then the profiling process commences. So it's not just a one-stop for all this activity. All these activities take place in several locations. But ultimately, all those that have been screened and found fit for the program are now moved to Operation Safe Corridor in Gombe.
Okay, well, maybe we'll leave banditry a bit because, communities are still living in some fear with regards to banditry. Just a few days ago, a community village was attacked in Zamfara. I do not know if you saw that clip as well. I hate to use the word clip, but these, when we see those kinds of things and we now hear reports later that these, bandits attacked the villages in broad daylight. So these things are still happening. How do you reassure people in those communities that indeed there's so much work is still going on to make sure that they feel safe?
Thank you very much. I wouldn't say there are no attacks. There are attacks, one or two places. But what we're looking at it is, when you look at the successes that have been achieved, an isolated incidents or one or two cannot be the yardstick to measure the level of progress. For one attack that you saw the clip or that you heard about 100 have been prevented from happening. So when you put the picture in totality, you will be able to appreciate that those are isolated incidents. It's not that we encourage isolated incidents. No, every Nigerian is entitled to full security, and that's what we signed off. And the armed forces is committed to doing that. But you see, banditry, kidnapping is a huge criminal ecosystem. It's a huge criminal ecosystem for various motives. Some could be for funding, some could be to undermine governance and the political system. Some could be to force people into compliance to illegal rules. Now, because it's a criminal ecosystem, the military line of operation alone is never adequate. The military line of operation alone is never adequate. And that is why the defense headquarters have always spoken about having a whole of society approach to tackling issues of banditry, issues of kidnapping. They are all linked. The terrorists, in an instance, is the same bandits, is the same kidnapper. The kidnapper is the same terrorist, the same bandits. Among all these people, you have the support structures. You talked about bandits. When they're also cattle, somebody buys these cattle of them. Somebody keeps the money. Somebody transports the cattle from here to all the way to Lagos, knowing it's a stolen cattle, it's a rustled cattle. So it's an ecosystem that every arm of government will need to be involved. Talk about lawfare, the judiciary, they need to be strengthened to be able to tackle these cases, to be able to bring people to book when they are arrested. The police, for instance, also need to be strengthened to be able to police these localities. Is it border issues? The immigration need to be involved. Some of these bandits too coming from across the borders. So what are we doing about border security? So the kinetic line cannot be enough to address this huge criminal ecosystem. But I want to assure Nigerians that the military, the armed forces is committed, and protecting vulnerable communities is a key program, because we believe that we must be able to build resilience among the communities. And how do you build this resilience? First, let them know that the armed forces is there. The armed forces conduct basic activities like farm security. They assure people, go to your farm. The armed forces is there to protect it. We've been able to look at our deployments around the countries, and there have been some realignments. So new forward operational bases have been set up in several places. Not that we'll have to set up an operational base in every community. It's difficult. But what we'll do is that look at communities that are at risk, map them, and set up FOBs. And the troops, the commanders of the troops, are in contact with these communities. So what we seek is much more collaboration, not just with the communities, but across board, to be able to ensure that...
Excuse me. And in fairness, we've been hearing quite a number of solutions coming up from the Office of the NSA in conjunction with that of the Chief of Defense Staff. One of the solutions we have heard is the introduction of forest guards into communities to take control of the forests. Yes. I know that we were supposed to have, I think I'm trying to remember their name now, but there is actually a government body that is in charge of keeping the forests as we speak. But it's unclear whether they're going to be upgraded, whether it's another new outfit that we're looking at here. Whatever the case is, what we're beginning to hear is that a number of communities are apprehensive with the introduction of forest guards. They think that if the forest guards are not people from amongst them or taken from amongst the security apparatus that currently exist within their communities, there could be challenges, with the introduction of strangers into their own forests. I do not know if, your ears are to the ground as to what the reception of communities that hosts this forest are currently, and what it is you're doing to adjust whatever program it is that you have with their own commentary.
Yeah, it's strengthening the forest guard. Don't forget that the forest guard has always existed in Nigeria.
Indeed.
If you go back to the 70s, to the 70s, 80s, they were really there. But what is happening now is like strengthening the forest guards in terms of training with the armed forces involved in. Training. And also increasing the strength in terms of recruitments. And it's a win-win situation for everybody. The whole idea is that most of the ungoverned spaces, which is fundamental to addressing the border, the terrorism, the kidnapping issue, is in taking much more control of these ungoverned spaces. And the forest reserves are a key part of it. So when the forest guards are now retrained, equipped, enabled to be able to function optimally, the chances are that the bandits, the kidnappers, the terrorists will not be able to hibernate and use those national reserves to be able to commit the atrocities. So it's a program we must start with Mr. President, for the emphasis in ensuring that the forest guards comes back in full force. The fear of the communities is found there, but in the recruitments, cognizance is taken to also be able to get people from those communities, but screened. The DSS is screening the membership to ensure that even the bad elements you want to weed out do not find themselves back into this structure. So they are being screened, and cognizance is looking to the locations where these forests are.
Our correspondent, went to a community in Ondo State. I'm hoping that our producers will be able to get that visual out. Who were apprehensive. They say that some relative peace has now returned to the community as a result of the introduction of Amotekun, which is a regional force that has, been operating in the southwest for a while. As a matter of fact, they say that the community, they had deserted their communities before, but as a result of the work that these people have done, they have been able to return. And they're a little apprehensive, with the introduction of forest guards, wondering how this is going to work with the current security arrangements they have on the ground. I'm not sure if you have heard some objections like this being raised, and perhaps some reassurance provided communities like this that are a little anxious as to how this arrangement is going to work.
Yes, I clearly understand what you're saying, but the forest guards will be able to strengthen whatever arrangement that the Amotokun or any other state security apparatus have been able to achieve because of the training they have, because of the capabilities they have. And remember, I did talk about having a whole of society approach. Now, those state security apparatus, not just in Ondo or in the southwest, everywhere, civilian joint task force in the northeast and northwest, they are all part of this enhanced apparatus. And within this total system, there is a lot of intel sharing. There's a lot of support, because even the Amotokun or the civilian joint task force cannot be able to operate alone or freely without the enabling support, when required, of the armed forces or the broader security agencies. So I think it's complementary, and at the end of the day, it will be a win-win.
Will you be reaching out to those communities that have expressed some anxiety, or communities that have existing arrangements for their own security, to say, no, they're not going to be working at cross purposes? They're actually there to support whatever it is you have on the ground.
Sure. Community engagement is a key part of our non-kinetic approach to operation. Community engagement, particularly the leadership, the opinion makers. Every commander in his AOR always have a way of reaching out to the community leaders to be able to tell them what the armed forces is doing, what the security agencies are doing, what they can do better, and also to be able to feel the pulse of the community. You cannot operate in a community and you are selected. If you do that, your chances of success is almost zero. So I can assure you that the local communities in those areas are continuously interfacing with these community leaders to reassure them, and also to carry them along in whatever operational plans they are doing.
So we've touched on the northwest and the north and the southwest somewhat. Let's go a little now to the northeast, where we had seen a resurgence of sorts of Boko Haram. We haven't heard any incident. Well, there was one last weekend, a suicide bombing reported, we understand, close to a market, or is it a place when someone was selling food or so. The president did issue a condolence message to that effect. But I wanted to know, what exactly is the current thinking on the ground with regards to what has now happened in Borno and the resurgence of terrorists that we're witnessing?
Thank you very much. I do agree there were a few setbacks in terms of attacks that the adversaries successfully executed. It could be a bomb attack, it could be an attack on troops, yes. But that is being addressed. And if you check back, you can find out that in the past 2 or 3 weeks now, it's a bit stabilized. The Chief of Army Staff, the Chief of Defense Staff, the Chief of Air Staff, and the Naval Staff have done a lot in the sense of trying to increase both the manpower and the capabilities deployed in those areas to be able to address this thing. Now, warfare, sadly, is not, the graph doesn't go up continuously. The graph is not up continuously. There's always a down end, there's always a push forward. So that will agree. But in terms of resurgence, I wouldn't want to call it a resurgence, because the areas as it is now are clearly under control. I look at it more of a one-off incident, and the troops are beginning to tackle those key areas by increasing ISR, increasing the overall understanding of the intelligence picture to be able to ensure that nothing passes through the cracks. So we are working on that, and I assure Nigerians we are on top of the situation.
I was just going to, ask for an explanation as to what could have caused what we saw. Because it wasn't, yes, the one that happened over the weekend, last weekend, was a one-off. But before that time, we had seen some attacks, concerted, it would seem, even on military bases. What would we say caused that spike of sorts?
Yes, the current thinking on the spike is not unlinked to the situation in the Sahel. There's a lot of pressure in terms of movement of foreign jihadists to the Sahel. Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. Now that drift is also moving towards Nigeria. But what we have done is to increase the presence at the borders, increase the monitoring of who passes through the borders. Our border with Niger is quite extensive, about 1,400 kilometers, and the CDS have consistently argued, and rightly too, that we must be able to fence the critical parts of this border. It looks like a big dream, but countries that have the challenges we have, like Pakistan, they fence the border, physical fencing. It takes time, but we must start from somewhere. Now, when we are able to fence those critical aspects, cover it with technology so that it can be able to monitor what happens, then we can reduce the number of movement of foreign terrorists, illegal weapons that underpin these conflicts we have. So the surge in terrorist activities in the Northeast, say about 1 month, 2 months ago, is purely a reflection of jihadists moving in to the Sahel and a few of them moving in towards our dear country.
How many kilometers are we looking at since we're talking fencing?
The total stretch is about 1,400 to 1,500 kilometers.
It's going to be a little impossible to fence all of that.
Yes. But we can start with the critical areas.
That's what I said. So that's what I was talking about. How many kilometers are we looking at as the critical areas?
I think that will have to be worked out when the decision is taken to commence the fencing. But it's something that we must seriously consider. Yes.
Well, we continue to watch developments, in the Northeast, and we hope that, we don't see so many one-offs. As a matter of fact, we hope that we don't see any one-offs. But, as you've said, for as many as we see, so many more have been prevented. Let's go to the Southeast. We've been seeing, there's been a quiet of some sorts in the Southeast, especially with regards to activities of IPOB and ESN, especially since the arrest of Simon Ekpa in Finland. Some people will say it is connected. You can confirm to us if it is connected. And what else you'll be looking at with regards to security and consolidating on what it would seem as the ground that has been gained in the southeast of the country?
Thank you. I think first I need to commend the troops. I'm happy you have acknowledged that situation in the southeast have improved. That is correct, absolutely correct. If you look at all the indices in terms of observance of the Monday sit at home, which was the main weapon of IPOB, that have reduced. In some states, Monday sit at home is almost gone, like Enugu State and others. Now, if you look at in terms of attack on security forces, attack on police stations, attack on correctional service facilities, that have all reduced. And why all this reduced is because the troops have been dominating the various areas, both kinetically and also conducting non-kinetic operations. Of course, the arrest of Simon Ekpa might be part of it in the sense that his propaganda, his use of the cyber to influence people to do what is not right, his ability to convince young Easterners has been reduced. But I would rather lay the credit on the kinetic and non-kinetic operations being conducted in the Southeast. And the governors in the Southeast also deserve credit because they have also been in the forefront of collaborating with the security agencies on talking to the community leaders that it's not the way to go. So when you put all this together, that accounts for the success we have achieved. To maintain it, we need to continue to do what we're doing. We need to continue to conduct both offensive and non-kinetic operations so that at the end of the day, the problem in the South will be truly resolved. The political issues also remain, but we'll leave that to the political masters. I'm sure at their best time, they'll be able to see how they can bring a closure to the agitation.
Clearly, the challenges that Nigeria faces right now are more internal than external. Yes, that's not to say that we will not watch what is happening externally. And of course, the influx of jihadists, as you said, happening in the Sahel region is also a development to keep a very close eye on. However, a lot of our challenges continue to remain internal. So looking forward, how do you think that the Nigerian military, starting from the defense headquarters, is going to be evolving to look at the challenges that we're facing internally and seeing how they can adapt, to tackle this more effectively? Because clearly it would seem that that's where we need the help of the military more.
Yeah, the armed forces of Nigeria have continued to evolve since when I joined the armed forces, and I became an officer in 1992. So transformation is a key part of the armed forces in the sense that warfare is dynamic. The challenges you face today is not what you face tomorrow. When I was a young officer, there was nothing like banditry. Even as a very senior officer, as a colonel, terrorism is something we never believed would happen. So because we know that the threat is dynamic, because the threat changes, so the armed forces continue to modernize, continue to transform. And the key areas of these transformations, first, in terms of training, leadership training, and also training of the soldiers in terms of platforms. The platforms for warfare have shifted. 10 years ago, drone was not there. But today, drone is there. It's a key platform. Even our adversaries in the Northeast are using drones. And not just using drones, single drones, swarms of drones. So we need to develop our counter-drone capability. IED was not there before. But now, if you look at the number of deaths we have in the Northeast, for instance, IED accounts for the majority. So that means the armed forces must develop capabilities for counter-IED. So these are all transformation areas that the armed forces is currently working on, improving the way we fight. So at the end of the day, we have an agile force that can be able to react at very short notice. We are also developing our SF capabilities to be able to tackle this crisis head on. So the armed forces is constantly transforming.
Well, General, we have to thank you, and as well as members of the Nigerian Armed Forces for the work that they do. We continue to wish them the very best in their service to the fatherland. Thank you so much for coming on Sunrise Elite this morning.
Thank you.
Major General Emeka Onumajuru is a Chief of Defense Operations, and we've been speaking on security update in many parts of the country.